is there a motion to approve? Okay, any abstentions? Two abstentions. All right, and now this is a Russell Kukunis show, a TV show. He's reading, so.
Is the PowerPoint ready to go, or I could do the other penalty schedule thing first?
They're still adjusting it? All right, you want to go forward with the penalty schedule first?
Penalty schedule first?
With the, Okay.
Okay, good morning. DEP has, for the board's consideration this month, several requests for changes to penalty schedules. There are changes to the air code penalty schedule. The first one pertains to a new rule that took effect in February relating to posting requirements for dry cleaners. This rule was promulgated because of the growing use of so-called green cleaning agents at dry cleaners as alternatives to PERC, which is the usual substance that's used. The use of PERC is being phased out. Many dry cleaners are now using these new solvents. Many people had no idea what these solvents were, and so in order to address that, the current posting requirement, which basically just said that you have to post what the state requires for the use of PERC, was amended so that dry cleaners that don't use PERC now have to post something that has a link that people can go to see the material safety data sheet for whatever chemical or chemicals they are using. We have obviously not begun to enforce this yet, even though it took effect in February. There is an extensive outreach effort to the dry cleaners that has been going on for months and will continue to be going on for a while this change to the penalty schedule goes through the CAPA process. So for the new subdivisions, the existing requirement to post the state sign is still in effect, and that is 12-18A. And there is an existing penalty for that which remains intact. For the new subdivisions, 12-18B, C, and D, the department is proposing a first offense penalty of $220, a second offense penalty of $440, and a default penalty of $875. And those numbers come from the minimum and maximum in the air code penalty schedule that apply to basically all other sections. So do we want to do these one at a time or separately?
So I think we should do it one at a time.
One at a time?
Okay. So are there any questions on this?
Yeah.
I actually have a question about the rule. When I just look at the excerpt that was presented in the, I'm sorry about my voice, oh sorry, it's Elizabeth Nauer, Citizen Benfer. When I just look at the excerpt that was provided in the materials, it suggests that subdivision A still applies even to those dry cleaners that aren't using PERC. I mean, it's just reading the plain language of it that you would still have to provide the state notice regarding PERC even if you're not using it. Is that the case?
Well, no, my understanding is that the state sign, and I'll take a look at it, we'll take a look at it. If the rule needs to be fixed, then we'll, but my understanding is that the state rule is for PERC. But that's not the way it reads to you.
Well, it just says the facility owner must post the notice required by the
By
state
state
rules in a conspicuous location. So are you saying that the state law
sign
only,
is for PERC.
but it's only required for dry cleaners that use
They
PERC?
use PERC.
Okay.
Gordon Martinez, partner. How come the penalty amounts for the state notice are slightly higher than the penalty amounts for the city, or is it at least with respect to the first offense?
One of the things that the dry cleaning industry was told is that if we did this rule, that the penalties would be the minimum possible penalties. So we did the rule. A lot of the dry cleaners were somewhat unhappy about it, although even all it does is actually require them to print out one piece of paper and put it up. But we had agreed that we would ask for the minimum penalty, and that's why we're asking for the lowest possible penalty.
Any other questions? Okay, let's take a vote on this schedule. All in favor, is there a motion to approve? Okay. All in favor? Okay, I think that's everybody. No abstentions? Okay. All right, so go for on this.
Okay, the next one is also an air-related one. It is for, pertains to new rules that have recently been promulgated. The first being under Chapter 2 of DEP's rules. This is a very extensive rule that had dated back to the 1970s. It set various engineering criteria for boilers. It had become very outmoded, so it was completely overhauled, and it now requires boilers to be periodically, actually annually, tuned up and tested. The only charging section in the rule is really the requirement under 209 that there be records maintained of that tune-up and that test. In addition, there was also a recently promulgated rule on emergency generators. Again, the charging section in the rule is the section that requires record keeping. So for these new record keeping requirements, DEP is requesting additions to the air penalty schedule under 2-09 and 40-02B, calling for a first offense penalty of $350, a second offense penalty of $545, and a default penalty of $875. These are the same as existing air code record-keeping related penalties.
Any questions?
I got two questions. The stick offer, right now, the DOB, the stick offer is the same as the offense, the first offense?
That's the way, under air and noise, the stick amount and the penalty amount are the same.
Okay.
There's no reduction.
Just a question about the emergency generator. Is this solely commercial use? Emergency generator, is this for like the person who may have a home and an emergency generator, or these are standby?
Well, for like a home generator would fall below the thresholds. These are like the emergency generators,
Huge ones, right?
like sewage treatment plants,
Standby.
facilities like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve? Okay, all approve? Any abstentions?
Okay, and the last one under the air penalty schedule relates to a local law that was enacted back in 2010 that we're going to be starting to enforce, and this relates to deliveries of heating oil, specifically Group 2, 4, and 6 oil, and these oils now must contain at least 2% biodiesel by volume. The penalty provisions that were put in the local law are very specific. For the use of oil that does not contain at least 2% biodiesel, the law requires that the penalties be as per Schedule E, which is an existing schedule, and the penalties depend on the size of the equipment in BTU. And for the delivery of such oil, the penalties, again, are explicitly set forth in the law. For a first offense, the penalty is $2,000. For a second offense, the penalty is $4,000. And in both cases, It would be plus an aggravated penalty for excess profit. This is something that the City Council has put in several air code provisions, and it would require a calculation of how much the supplier of the fuel had profited by not putting enough biodiesel in it. Again, I'm not sure how that would actually work in practice. It's never come up so far with any of these provisions, but that is the explicit language in the bill, so that's what we have to ask for in the penalty schedule.
Any questions? Dan Albano?
Dan Albano. I noticed the fuel oil refers to as 2, 4, and 6. Wasn't there a change to the type of fuel oil that you have to use?
In terms of just in general?
Right.
But we're going to actually get to that, yes. 6 is going to be out as of
Right.
next year, and 4 will be banned in 2030.
Right, okay, thank you.
Emily Lally, citizen member. I was just wondering who the penalty and the violation gets written to. Is it possible that the owner or the person who's getting the delivery is charged, or is it only on the oil company?
But can you repeat the question?
She wants to know who is going to be issued the violation. Will it be the person getting the delivery, or will it be the person delivering, the oil company delivering the oil?
The enforcement, there's a separate provision to enforce, again, for use and for delivery. I would think that it would be primarily targeted at the person who was supplying the oil that didn't comply. People using it might not even be aware that what they were getting from the supplier was not in compliance with the law. So I think if we ever do enforce this, it would be much more likely that we would do it against the supplier. But the way the law was passed, it provides for specific penalties for both. So.
Elizabeth, our citizen member. I just had a question about the third and subsequent offense. There are no penalties listed for that. Does that mean that for
they were not set forth in the law.
So that it would just be the same for the second offense?
We would, if anybody ever violated this more than twice, they would just be cited again as a second offender. Although I would think if it was a supplier and they were habitually doing this, then it might be referred to potentially to other law enforcement besides getting a notice of violation.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve? All approve? Vote for approval? I think that's everybody. Okay. Sorry. Any abstentions? One abstention.
Okay, the next one is for an addition to the asbestos penalty schedule, and this relates to a new law that the council passed in January, overriding Mayor Bloomberg's veto of it in December. This establishes a new program which DEP is required to administer for registering individuals as master environmental hazard remediation technicians. And in order to get this certificate, one has to be a licensed asbestos handler, a licensed lead abatement worker, and you must complete specified training in hazardous materials, microbial remediation, water damage restoration, fire damage restoration, PCB awareness, bloodborne pathogens and infection control. And once you have completed all of these trainings, you would submit the evidence of all of this to DEP, and DEP would then issue you this certificate. I would point out that the certificate itself does not entitle you to do anything. That the other trainings are what entitle you to do the various things. There is only one charging section in the new law, which is 24-1002C. which makes it unlawful to say that you are one of these people if you are not in fact one of these people. The law provides for a minimum penalty of $1,000 and no maximum penalty. Since the asbestos control program is going to be administering this program, what we decided to do is to establish penalties that were similar to those in the asbestos penalty schedule. So for the first offense, it would be $1,200 with a stipulation offer of $1,000. Second offense would be $2,400 with a stipulation offer of $1,500, and the default penalty would be $10,000.
I have a question, that's Ronaldo Hilton from Building. So if this title doesn't entitle you to anything, what would make someone hold themselves out to be a master environmental hazard?
It appears that this bill was something that the environmental contractors were pushing for, specifically the unionized ones. Many of these trainings that you need to get this certificate are only available through union-administered programs. So that appears to be the reason why they passed this bill. I assume that they want to hold their workers out as having the certificate for sort of marketing purposes.
So,
So you can charge.
no, I'm just wondering, how does DEP intend to, like, even,
We intend to, we are setting up a program, and if people come into us with all these certificates, that they have done all these trainings, we will give them this registration. And again, it doesn't entitle you to do anything that you wouldn't ordinarily otherwise be entitled to do. So we really do not have any enforcement type of program in mind. It's more of just a license issuing program at this point.
right, precisely, so that's, my point is, why do we develop a penalty schedule for it?
Because the law does provide that it's illegal if you hold yourself out to be one of these people if you're not one of them, and that it's really the only, it's the only charging section in the law. In the unlikely event that anybody ever did that, we decided that we should have a penalty available. I mean, I don't know whether we'll ever issue a ticket for this, but.
Yes, you have no miscellaneous, I'm sorry, I mean, I don't know about your penalty schedule specifically, but do you have like a miscellaneous charging section that you could technically?
No, because this law has a penalty provision in it that says a violation of this law shall carry a minimum penalty of $1,000. There's no maximum, but it says a minimum of $1,000. So since the asbestos group is going to administer this, we decided to just basically use the lowest category of asbestos penalties.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve? Okay. All approve? Vote for approval? How many do we have now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any abstentions? 2. Any noes? And 1 no. All right, who did we miss? Okay, all approve, can we get it again? 8. Abstentions, we'll just go through it again, 2, and 1 no. Good? Okay.
And finally, we have a section in the asbestos rules that obviously is not issued very often, but we recently discovered that it had been omitted from the asbestos penalty schedule. It probably has been so omitted for a long time. 1-91N, which relates to proper installation of air ducting, and we're just requesting that the board add that to the asbestos penalty schedule at the lowest level of penalties.
Any questions? Okay, motion to approve? Okay, all approve? All right, any abstentions?
And obviously, I abstain on all of these, right?
Obviously.
Obviously.
All right. Okay, Russ, you're up again. I think.
Is the PowerPoint?
Do we have a PowerPoint? back. All right.
That's fine.
So we do have the slides on handout.
Everybody has a handout.
Yes, we could go on that. All right, well, we wait to find out if we have the PowerPoint presentation up. Russ was going to go forward on the request for C and Ds.
Okay, so this month, in terms of cease and desist requests, DEP has 20, the usual 28 requests for cease and desist orders relating to failure to install backflow prevention devices. So those all follow the usual pattern. So if anybody has any questions about any of those.
Any questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve? And all approve? Okay. Russ abstains.
Okay, then, under the noise code, there are 2 requests for cease and desist orders. The first is relating to Fave Pizza Corp. at 186 Columbus Avenue. This restaurant has been cited on 4 occasions for noise from its kitchen exhaust, most recently in May. And based on the repeated violations and continuing failure to come into compliance, DEP is requesting an order to cease and desist. You do the other noise one, or you do the noise one separately?
Does anybody have any questions on this one? No, but do
The other one.
vote to that.
Okay, the other one relates to the 7-Eleven located at 170 Avenue A. And this one is for noise from the refrigeration system. It has been cited 3 times, most recently also in May. And again, due to the repeated violations and continuing failure to comply, DEP is requesting an order to cease and desist.
Any questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve? Okay, and all approve? Any abstentions?
No.
We're approving? Okay. All right,
Okay,
Russ
and
abstains.
lastly, we have, I believe, 23 requests for cease and desist orders relating to failure to have operating certificates for boilers using number 6 fuel oil. The increase in the number of these requests, and there will probably continue to be this many requests at every board meeting for about the next year or so, is the reason why we had decided to do this PowerPoint. But we have 23 of these today. These are all locations where the current certificate of operation is expired. It is for use of number 6 fuel oil. Respondent has been given a notice of violation. It's been adjudicated in violation. The time for correction has passed, and they still have not renewed the certificate for another type of fuel oil.
Okay, there's a question?
Douglas Swan, citizen member. I just wanted to know if you are maybe consider to target areas in Harlem and the Bronx first because they have historically high asthma rates.
Well, when we do the PowerPoint, we look at the maps, you'll see that in the borough, in each borough, not all of them, but particularly in Manhattan and the Bronx, number 6 boilers are heavily concentrated in certain areas. And we are, in fact, targeting the areas where they have the most number. But the law requires that everybody stop using this fuel by June of next year. So really, it's an effort that's citywide, but extra attention is being paid to the areas that have the greatest number of these installations.
Okay, any other questions? Is there a motion for approval? Okay, and all approve? They do.
No.
I'm sorry. One abstent. Wait, let's go back. Okay. Everybody who's for, please raise your hand. Okay. Any abstentions?
Yes, one extension for the request for order to cease and desist covering 21 Holland Avenue in the Bronx.
Okay.
Any other abstentions? All right, Russ, I think we're ready for your PowerPoint presentation. Okay. All right, just to let everybody know, apparently the date that was on the board that shows up in the back was incorrect. It said March 27th, and obviously today is June 26th, I hope, right? June 26th, 2014. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so again, since we're going to be asking the board to approve a lot of these cease and desist requests over the next year, probably almost about the same number every month as we're doing now for the backflow, like 20, 25 requests. We had thought that it would be a good idea to do a quick PowerPoint for the board to explain why all of this is going on and what the big rush is. So, just by way of a little historical background, May of 2011, the rule change provided that no new certificates of operation for boilers could be issued for number 4 or number 6 oil. So these are new, brand new certificates of operation. As of July 1st of 2012, there would be no more renewals of existing certificates of operation to use number 6. So certificates of operation are good for 3 years. So the last valid number 6 certificates will be expiring on June 30th of next year. So as you can see, on July 1st of next year, number 6 is no longer allowed. In terms of enforcement, there may be some people next June who are still in the process of converting. And so we will basically let those conversions go through even if they don't quite finish by July 1st. And for that same reason, enforcement may also extend beyond July 1st of next year. There will probably be some holdover people that we'll still be enforcing against in the second half of next year. And then in 15 years, number 4 use has to be discontinued as well. So number 6 fuel oil, this is what it is. This is what it looks like. You can see it's a very heavy, thick, tarry substance. And it's manufactured basically from crude oil. When all of the other products are made from crude oil, gasoline, jet fuel, everything else, number 6 is what's left. And that's why they call it residual fuel oil as well. And that's why all of the impurities in the crude oil are left behind in this stuff. All of the heavy metals, all of the sulfur, everything that was not, that when they cooked off the gasoline and all of the other products, all that stuff gets left in this gunk, which is number 6 fuel oil, and that's why it is something that we want people to stop using. So as you can see from this chart, which goes up to 2009, in a 20-year period, the use of this oil has decreased substantially, and the green part, which is commercial and residential use, has by 2009 almost completely disappeared. If anybody has any questions, they can just, whenever anything comes up. Again, you see that beginning on this chart in 1940, the production of this and the supply of this peaked in the 1970s and has been continuously going down ever since. And so this is really why we're doing this. If you look at the top line, the 2008 numbers, that was the amount of various pollutants that were being generated by the use of number 6 oil. And you have particulate material, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide. And the numbers below are the reductions. If the use of number 6 had been changed completely to each of those different fuels. So, for example, under sulfur dioxide, you can see that everybody who was using number 6 in 2008 switched to natural gas, the sulfur emission would essentially completely vanish because natural gas has no sulfur in it and number 6 fuel oil has a lot of sulfur in it. So as you can see, by getting people to switch to these cleaner fuels, there will be tremendous reductions in these pollutants with the exception of carbon monoxide, which is actually would increase. The reason for that being that number 6 is very dense and it has a lot of energy in it. So you don't have to burn that much of it to generate the energy. The other fuels are much lighter and you have to burn more of them. And that actually results in an increase, a slight increase, but an increase in carbon monoxide, but a tremendous decrease in all of the other pollutants. Just to quickly go through the status of where we are in some of these pollutants. Under US EPA, New York City right now is not in attainment with the ozone standard, which is caused by the nitrogen oxide, which the banning of number 6 will reduce substantially. We are finally now in compliance with particulate matter standard, but this is still a very harmful pollutant that we want to reduce as much as possible. And you can see that both PM and ozone are linked to many different physical problems. And on the next slide, you can see specifically with regard to asthma that New York City is, this is 10 years ago, but I think it still holds true, substantially above the national average in terms of asthma hospitalizations for children, particularly in the Bronx. And as we'll see when we get to the maps, we'll see that the Bronx has an unusually high concentration of boilers that are still using number 6. So in June 2011, we had 5,300 certificates of operation for number 6 fuel oil. As of March of this year, that has been reduced by 3,200. So as of March, we had 2,100 left, of which 950 were expired, and 1,150 were still valid. So obviously, all of these cease and desist orders that you're seeing requests for are from that 950 group. And as you see on the bottom, from the 950, we've issued as of March 880 notices of violation, which have resulted in 450 conversions. And as of the time the slide was prepared, we had only requested 15 cease and desist orders, but that went up last month and now is increased again by the ones from this month. So in Manhattan, the comparison between 2011 and 2014, you see that each dot represents a boiler that's using number 6. So you can see that it's somewhat less dense. And you can see where the concentrations are in Manhattan, on the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side, and in Midtown. And you can see in the Bronx that there are also a lot of these, and it's basically in the corridor that, I think that's the Grand Concourse, along the Grand Concourse in that vicinity. There are a lot of buildings that use number 6 stuff. In Brooklyn, it's more scattered, but mostly around Prospect Park, and you can see that it's decreased in Brooklyn quite a bit from 2011 to 2014. In Queens, it's mostly in northern Queens, and again, it's decreased quite a bit. And so by next June, all of these docks are supposed to be gone. And Staten Island, only a handful. So, any questions?
I was just wondering if the concentration in certain areas is due to the age of the buildings in those areas?
Yeah, a lot of these are apartment buildings, and they're sort of pre-war apartment buildings. A lot of them, I think, were originally built to use coal. And then in the 1940s, the graph, everybody started using this number 6 fuel. I think a lot of them in that time frame of like the 40s to the 70s converted to boilers that use this fuel. But there were people up until 3 years ago when it was banned who were still looking to install new number 6 boilers because the fuel is cheap. So as we ban this and people stop using it, one of the things that will probably happen is that the fuel is going to start to become much harder to get in this part of the country. New York City is really the last bastion of this in the Northeast. So as it gets less and less used, the suppliers are really going to convert to producing and supplying other fuels. So we hope that'll be an incentive for holdouts to convert.
Ronaldo, from the building, I think we've asked this before, but just remind me, number 6 supply is still legal, right? It's still going to be legal
Yes,
even after the ban?
Yeah, oh yeah, well, Con Ed has a plant that runs on it, so yes. It's used, there are other uses. It's banned for use in boilers and hot water heaters that require a certificate of operation from us under the air code. For power generation, for use in ships, one of the slides actually, I didn't mention it, but the main use of this going forward is going to be in ships. It's called bunker fuel. And so it will continue to be made and used. But so yeah, the ban only applies to things that need a certificate of operation under the air code.
Yeah, but wouldn't, I mean, do you think it would be prudent if the city had banned its supply to these particular these particular uses in the city of New York, so that the fuel would be
Well, that would involve, it specifically would involve a major Con Ed.
No, well, you can exempt, car companies, right? I'm talking about supplying these to these residential commercial buildings that use it now and having a ban.
Well, they're the ones that have valid certificates are legal.
I understand, but
Yeah.
after, where I'm going with this is, I don't know how much enforcement you're gonna have, really, that issue some violations, because you really can't turn people's power, heat off in the wintertime. So for those guys.
Well, we will seal people who fail to comply with this. Probably not right now, but we will seal people who don't comply with this. That decision has been made at the commissioner level.
Yeah, I understand. So it's sealing those folks, as city is prepared, I guess, to.
They'll be given every possible notice and warning first, but if they ultimately decide that for whatever reason they're not going to do it, then next summer they will be sealed. Yep.
Emily Lally, citizen member. How does this relate to the other section about having 2% biodiesel in the delivery, does that cover?
Biodiesel has to be used in all of these fuels, except obviously natural gas. But for 2, 4, and 6, biodiesel has to be used in all.
So maybe they can cite it under that?
It's just that sometimes, it's gonna be easier to just pay these penalties.
But we have a very, we know who the suppliers are, and we are monitoring how that's going, and, yeah. And they are, as the market for it is contracting, they are getting out of the number 6 business.
Okay, any other questions? Great,
Okay.
thank you, Russ.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, Helene Boston is going to make a presentation on the sanitation penalty schedule.
Okay, so we have a final rule. This was a technical rule. It was involved relettering 2 subdivisions relating to the city yard waste collection program. Nobody appeared at the public hearing. Any questions?
Okay, so is there a motion to vote? Okay, all for? Okay, anybody against? Any abstentions?
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, Epi Zidius is going to present on the pre-ceiling reports.
Good morning. There are 13 reports for today's board, all of which were issued after live hearings and all of which are pre-sealing reports. One of the pre-sealing reports recommends that the C&D action be discontinued in light of the fact that named respondent, 2995 Botanica Square, did not own the side of the property at the time of the NOV. And 9 of the pre-sealing reports recommend that there be no sealing given respondent's compliance and are therefore unremarkable. However, I would like to bring to the board's attention to the pre-sealing reports issued in C&D orders 2013A, 2013D, and 2014O. In C&D order 2013A, the predicate NOV was issued to Willowtown Marketing, doing business as Iris Takeaway, premises located at 16 Columbia Street in Brooklyn, for odor emanating from its premises on May 12, 2012. A CAD was approved by the board in January 2013, following respondent's default and the issuance of 3 NOVs for odor emissions. At the pre-sealing held on June 10th, respondent's representative testified that an exhaust fan and duct had been installed and provided proof of purchase and installation. Therefore, based upon the foregoing, ALJ Julie Jaffe recommended that the premises remain unsealed pending reinspection by DEP and further reinspection confirming no violation. In C&D Order 2013D, the predicate NOV was issued to Albec Management, the premises located at 5392nd Street in Brooklyn, for noise coming from respondent's cooling tower in violation of the New York City Noise Code. A C&D was approved by the board in August 2013, following the issuance of 2 additional NOVs for noise violations. On June 10th, respondent's counsel appeared at a pre-sealing hearing to report that respondent had removed the cited cooling tower and replaced it with a new cooling tower, which is in compliance with the New York City Noise Code. Therefore, based upon the foregoing, ALJ Jaffe recommended that there be a reinspection of the equipment to confirm that the old equipment had been removed and new equipment had indeed been installed. Finally, in C&D Order 2014-0, the predicate NOV was issued to Cafe Tallulah, premises located at 240 Columbus Avenue in New York, for noise coming from the respondent's kitchen exhaust unit. A C&D was approved by the board in April 2014, following the issuance of 2 additional NOVs. At the pre-sealing hearing conducted recently on June 17th, respondent presented proof that a soundproof enclosure had been installed around the exhaust fan on the roof of the cited premises, as well as a letter from its acoustic engineer confirming compliance with the noise code. Therefore, based upon the foregoing, ALJ Jaffe recommended that the equipment remain unsealed pending initial reinspection confirming no violation and reinspection 180 days thereafter. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, is there a motion for a vote? Okay, all approved? Any abstentions? And no one's against. Okay, is there a motion to go into executive session? Okay, we're now going into executive session. If you're not a part of BCD, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Thank you. It was quick. Okay, we're back in public session, so all those in favor of affirming the appeals decisions from June 5th, 2014 and June 19th, 2014 appeals panel as presented? Okay, that looks like everybody. Okay, before we adjourn this meeting, before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want to make sure all attendees have signed the attendance sheet. And now is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Before we do that,
Okay,
can I make
yes.
another motion?
Okay.
I would make a motion that this board declares support for the U.S. men's soccer team.
Is there a motion to approve? Is there a motion to approve?
It's ultra-virus, but I like it.
All right, so now is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.